Hi, everybody. This is Tom Broussard talking today about Dr. Martha Taylor Sarno. She has been an SLP for a long, long time, and I had this wonderful opportunity to talk with her a couple of nights ago about the article I'm about to send out. It was a wonderful, wonderful interview. Shark as attack and unbelievable given her history that we're now about to talk about. But the article is called The Why of the Invisible Language Disorder of Aphasia. And in her case, and she is number 19 in this series, there's only 5 more interviews to go, five more articles to go. And reading her materials over many, many years, I began to understand that as much as she was working on it back then, she was also thinking about the future and what still needed to be done. As she was seeing the beginning of really the SLP world, the speech language world after World War II. But she lived such a long time through that process that she began to understand, began to write about it, what is still needed, given the improvement that she was seeing, as we have all been seeing it even in my life. Healthcare world has improved. However, there is a lot more to go. So we're going to talk about that going forward. But she is a wonderful, wonderful person and a clinician, given her work. Believe it or not, her birthday is coming up soon, so you'll be able to see when you see the article. She started at something called the Rusk Institute, and she started there in 1949. She lived there, worked there for 59 years. From 1950, she became the director actually from 1950 until 2009. Which just by itself, people would go, oh my goodness gracious. Well, that may be that she was retired then, but she hasn't even retired yet. She still volunteers in New York. So that's what I mean, an amazing person that has done what she has done to really help create and help steer the speech language world. She founded the National Aphasia Association. Most of you know about that. We need what we call the NAA to continue to improve as well, and that has been happening as well. And she founded it in 1987 and was the president there for 14 years. Martha, hi Martha, Martha. Really was at the very, very beginning, right after World War II, when people were coming home from the war. And for the most part, people that had aphasia came as a result of shell-shocked, hurt during the war. There were civilians that had stroke and aphasia, but not many people knew much about it. And as she said, virtual no aphasia rehabilitation services back then. And at that time, only about 1,600 speech-language pathologist people back then. Now we have about, pick a number, 200,000 people with stroke language people. And that includes, of course, lots and lots of groups, which is very helpful because they're highly therapeutic, as well as websites that do provide a lot of information going forward. But as Martha was saying, as she was witnessing all of this, she could start to see that for all of the therapeutic activity that was going on for decades, she was beginning to see about, on top of everything else, the disconnect between the person who has had obviously an altered personal identity as well as a sense of self, and was really pushing to have that new tool, whatever that new tool might look like, to be adopted going forward. She said to ensure that for all of the role-playing activities and quizzes and tests that they do with us, we get so little therapeutic hours clinicians. And for all of that activity, it still doesn't replace what she said, an authentic functional experience. So all of that is all part of what she was able to see. So she was seeing it and working based on what could she in the moment, and stepping back. She was also realizing what she was part of, and was writing about as part of writing about what needs to happen beyond what she was actually doing at that time. So that was also very more than interesting, because there aren't that many people that had worked with that industry for such a long time, was able to write about what he or she was doing in the moment, understanding the improvement that was being made with her by her own hands and words, but then also stepping back and writing about the future that was needed to come as the hospital system was beginning to emerge after World War II, and growing into what we have here today, which is a highly fractured and siloed hospital system. And I continue to say, and I think I said it in the article, that the people that work for those institutions, the doctors, the nurses, the clinicians, the staff, as I say, are always heroes. They really are, because all of us have been through them, whether it's a big thing or a little thing when it comes to health. They're all heroes because they really do take care of us, and they are paid to do it. It's not like they're part of the family. But believe it or not, they are part of the family, if we could only understand it that way. So they're all heroes, but unfortunately, some of those heroes that drive the healthcare system to move in one direction or another aren't really heroes, unless it's just the god of money, power. And unfortunately, that's how the system becomes siloed, even though the people within it aren't per se siloed. They just have to do what the system says. And unfortunately, if you do what the system says, unfortunately, there's a lot of things that are missing in the siloed environment institutions, such that in the case of what Martha was starting to see, and what I certainly have been talking about when it comes to the highly siloed system of healthcare, she was starting to see that for all of that, we have to do more going forward, for all of what she had seen. And as she was, holding that up as something we needed to work on, she was able to see, and I'm able to see, and now you've seen Deborah Marlinson and her work with identity theft, that was basically taking up what Martha was talking about, basically. But because for all of this work, as Deborah said, I'm using her quote now, really building off of Martha's quotes, regardless of therapy, apps, or technology, nothing matters as much as continued determination and work. As I said, motivation and practice really are the key to aphasia recovery. And given that there's this gap in between the hospital people who stabilize who we are and our discharge, there's this huge gap, because they are discharged with the patient not knowing what they have this thing called aphasia. And that can happen for months, 3 to 6 months, before they finally move into the rehab world, where they too just assume that, oh, you already know about aphasia because you came from the hospital. The truth is, we don't. And unless you start telling us now on the rehab side, we also wouldn't know. But all that time in between is highly useful to use that time while still waiting for formal therapy. And as Deborah said, that she's taking up on what Martha had said, the loss of identity and sense of self for a person with aphasia, which, as Deborah said, that she has identified the same thing as a long journey going forward for recovery. So such that with the system being so siloed that literally you have the right hand can't see what the other hand is doing. And that too is really part of the problem going forward. And unfortunately, the system is such that the hospitals will actually try to stop you from your payment and coverage, just because that's their incentive. That's what they want. People say, I'm going to pay you more if you will make sure that you don't do these things. And unfortunately, that doesn't do anything to deliver optimum care and compassion for patients going through this highly bumpy road after discharge without information about you now have into an abyss of months, still not knowing until you find your way, if you're lucky, to the other shore. Quoting with a couple of good quotes from Dr. Sarno, as it says here, and she wrote this a couple of decades ago: in the current climate, the challenge to change society's view of aphasia will recover a systematic and aggressive program of public education at all levels. All avenues of education need to be utilized. By the way, being able to actually read and speak out loud, because I don't get that opportunity, it gives me a lot more therapeutic effort, use to be able to do that from my perspective, being able to pronounce what I mispronounce words like that. So this turns out, again, I've said it before, anything you do is therapeutic. What I do here is therapeutic. That is the way the brain works. Really, when it comes down to the healthcare world, that the entire reason for what Martha had launched and what Deb and I and others are now taking up that challenge to go forward is to ensure to change that why. That's what the article is entitled, where the why and the culture of the healthcare system is the why that has to be changed for this invisible language disorder of aphasia. And that is really how it happens, because unfortunately, it was invisible back then after World War II. It is still invisible today, even though there have been lots of progress. Sometimes it comes in hits and fisses, just because if you have a famous person who has a stroke and aphasia, then there's a little bump in understanding, but that goes away. And until it is built into the system, it just isn't going to work. So I will be speaking at the National ASHA conference in Boston in 2 weeks. I will be talking about and entitled Fish Can't See Water and Hospitals Can't See Aphasia. And really, it is a cultural issue that has to be adopted to shift our system to realize that because of the timing issue, if you discharge people with aphasia and you don't tell them what it is and haven't educated them and their family, at that point, they will remain ignorant until they make it, if they are lucky enough at all, make it to the rehab shore and begin to understand it. But unfortunately, the immediate 3 to 6 months is a large part of what makes us, quote, get better, based on getting it earlier rather than later going forward. So this has to be done as articulated by Martha Sarno and Deborah Meyerson. Sorry, I continue to mispronounce people's words, and I'm sorry about that. Meyerson. And believe it or not, I did in my conversation with Dr. Sarno, I referred to her, and she did as well, about a couple other people who are all part of this going forward. And if I mention a few, there are still thousands more, but if we have thousands, we need tens of thousands. If we have tens of thousands, we need hundreds of thousands to actually do what it is we are now talking about. But Jerry Kaplan is a good friend of mine, and has been a good friend of Martha's as well, even from when Jerry first went to that company that we mentioned earlier, right at the very beginning, when Jerry, believe it or not, went to the Rusk Institute and met her. We're obviously talking a long time ago. So she remembers him and appreciates what he has done over the years. Jackie Hinklin, who just got an award out of Florida, just got an award. She'll be at ASHA as well. They too have met each other over the years, have read their information over the years, and appreciates what they are both doing to continue to push that ship forward and steer that ship forward. And Darlene Williamson, who also is a friend of mine, and when I first wrote my first book, Darlene was very interested and helped me all along the way. And of course, that has been now now coming up on 9 years since I wrote the first book. And she continues to be the president of the National Aphasia Association. So all of us are all part of this, what do I want to say, army, although it's a very small army, pushing to make this happen, to change the culture of the healthcare system. And I know I'm not really confident that this is all really going to work. But if you don't do what we are all doing, then for sure it's not going to work. So it's not going to happen just by gravity. So I appreciate the gravity of having this wonderful opportunity to see Dr. Martha Taylor Sarno as one of the stars in the constellation of aphasia world. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much to Martha for letting me having that conversation with you earlier this week. Take care of yourself. Talk to you soon, and we'll see you in a couple more weeks with the next edition of the article. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.